So Andrew, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us.
Cheers, thanks very much.
I have to ask, as someone who is obviously now famous for baking, but comes from an engineering background, which came first for you? Was it a love of baking, or a love of engineering?
Well, that's a good question. I think I always had a love of food. I was quite a chubby wee child. I was always nibbling at stuff in the kitchen. So I've probably been a foodie before I was a baker, but I suppose really in terms of actually making stuff myself, it was probably engineering that came first. I was a very curious child and always fascinated by how stuff works. So and then I started my engineering degree, and then the baking came across as a little something on the side.
Was it a sociable thing or stress relief?
Initially, we didn't have the best kitchens at university, so it wasn't really stress relieving because it was some dodgy kitchenware, but it was definitely good in terms of the social aspects. Every time someone had a birthday or something, or after a long day of revision in exam season, kind of whipping up a lemon drizzle could be quite cathartic.
Excellent. And the nation has come to know your edible creations, but what is it that you actually design and build in your daytime? What are you an engineer of?
I basically deal with jet engines day in, day out, so I work in analysis. So put it simply, I take test results, so pressures, temperatures, engine speeds, that type of thing, and then I run a computer model to try and work out how efficient the engine is, how much fuel it's burning, and then we use that to kind of develop new products. A lot of numbers, a lot of graphs going away. Baking's quite a nice creative outlet on the side of that.
Speaking of creative outlets, you sing too, don't you? Have you got any concerts or anything like that coming up?
I'll actually be. I'm doing a concert in Derby. I sing with a group called the Sitwell Singers, and we're doing a big 50th anniversary concert at the end of October in Derby Cathedral. Some very classical singing on one side, but last year I got into a bit of musical theatre, which is quite a good bit of fun. There might be some people who spotted me in a slightly different outfit earlier in the year and do some musical theatre numbers.
Do you combine all of those things together as well? Is there a lot of singing while you bake or singing while you work?
I think, there can be quite a lot of singing and kind of jiving around the kitchen sometimes when baking, especially true when I was practicing for Bakeoff and everything. It's nice to be able to kind of relax fully in the kitchen, although I'm not sure how much my housemates appreciated that.
So I'm interested to know what made you decide to apply for Bakeoff.
Well, I suppose I've always been a bit competitive, but I've always loved baking as well. I've been a massive fan of the show since it started. I've watched it since Series 1, and I almost applied for Series 6. I kind of practiced a bit last year, and then I thought, this is the year to go for it. And my friends and family suggested I should apply. And I thought, I'll give it a really good go this year. And it seems to be going all right so far.
What's been your favourite thing that you've baked on the show so far?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I think probably the thing that I was most proud of might have been what I called the gingerbread bridge that I had to do for Biscuit Week, actually, because that had a couple of iterations before I settled on that one. Last year for work, I tried to make a full arch bridge, and it had something like 50 elements with different structural bits, but that just turned into an icing covered mess in the kitchen. So I needed to reduce my ambition slightly to fit it into the time.
And when you're coming up with your signature bake and your showstopper, how do you decide what you're going to make? Are there like suggestions, or do you just have to pretty much be creative about what you're going to do?
Yeah, you have to be very creative. So I think we obviously have to fulfill a certain things. In the first week, we had to do a drizzle cake, so it has to be a drizzle cake. But in terms of the flavors and everything, that's totally up to us, and we can try and bring our own creativity and how we present it, what flavors are in it. That's totally up for us. And it's been really interesting so far that everybody's had very different ideas. In the first episode, there weren't 5 lemon drizzle cakes. Everybody's taken a slightly different slant on it, which has been quite interesting to watch back as well.
Where do you get your ideas from? Is it all your own favourite things and flavours, or do you take ideas from family and friends?
I think the ideas initially came from inside my head, but I had a trusted panel of taste testers when I was trying to perfect the recipe. So for that lemon and rosemary drizzle cake, I made several practice versions of that at home before it kind of, I committed to going in to do it. So, I think definitely not improved the waistline of any of my housemates, put it that way.
Just thinking about, you say you've had a chance to try and test out making a lot of things, but is there anything that you would really like to bake, but you've not had the chance to actually attempt yet?
I'd love it. This one came to me last week, actually. I've always wanted to make a croque en bouche. So it's one of those massive cone-shaped things made out of choux pastry and caramel. And they look really impressive. They look great fun to make, but I've never had a good excuse to make one.
If you weren't a contestant on this series of Bake Off, who would you want to win?
Oh, that's a tough question. I'm going to be very diplomatic and say that they're all great, and it's very hard to choose between them. And I'm not just saying that to be Mr. Nice Guy, but genuinely we all get on so well. And I think the main thing that I found was everybody was very supportive, and although everybody obviously wants to be the best each week, nobody wants anybody else to do badly, so it's kind of a friendly competition, but you don't wish anybody else to fail on the bakes or anything. So, whoever it is in the end fully deserved it, and they're all a great bunch of bakers. So that's my diplomatic answer.
We had world-renowned tinkerer Terence Eden on the show earlier, and he had a bit of a bizarre question for you. Who smells better, Mel or Sue?
Who smells better?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I don't. Oh, I'm trying to remember now. I mean, to be honest, I never really got up close for a good sniff. There's generally so much kind of, whether it be like fryer fat or like kind of last week butter coming out of the oven. I'm not sure if I was able to get a good sniff up close. I imagine they spend a lot of time together, so I imagine they're both pretty similar on the smell front.
Thinking about the hosts and the judges, which of them out of Mary and Paul and Mel and Sue do you think would make a better engineer?
Ooh. That's tough. I think it might have to be Paul. I don't know, because bread generally, you have to be very precise in terms of proving time, and there's quite a lot of technical aspects. There's more to it than meets the eye, I think, and Paul's been doing that for a long time. But, saying that, Mary's very accomplished, and although bread might not be her forte, she's definitely very competent when it comes to kind of broader cooking and baking. She's got a lot of experience, but I'd say Paul would make an all right engineer. I'm not sure if he has the temperament for it, but I think he's definitely got the precision.
Do you think that the measure twice, cut once approach with engineering works well in baking? I mean, we saw you measure your butter. Is that...
I did measure my butter. I kind of look at baking as nothing goes right first time, and even when you practice things, baking is kind of just constant attempt to maximise your chances of success.
Well, and everyone brings something different to the show, and I think one of the things that's been so great about this series is the diversity amongst all of the people that are there. Out of everyone that you've worked with on this series of Bake Off, who would you say was the nerdiest?
Ooh, the nerdiest? I'd say it would probably have to be Tom, I reckon. Well, Tom, you saw when he was doing Bread Week, Tom's got amazing knowledge of loads of kind of classical things. He comes from a very arts background. I come from a very science background, but we're both kind of nerdy in our own field. And I can't even pronounce what he called his bread in the end. It was some legend with Thor and lots of letters I couldn't pronounce, but he is a very knowledgeable guy, and I reckon out of all the bakers, he's probably geeking it up there with me.
Okay, so a number of our listeners are aspiring engineers, whether it's mechanical, electrical, software, or aerospace. As someone living that dream and working in the field of engineering and kind of gone off to studying that, do you have any advice that you'd give to those people, or anything that you wish someone had told you when you were younger? Stay curious.
When I was younger, I was probably a bit of a pain at school, and that I'd be given an answer to a question, but if I didn't get to kind of the fundamentals of it, I'd just keep on asking, and it probably drove some of my teachers mad. But I think that's so important, especially when you're coming into engineering, is just to be curious about how the world works, wanting to understand the laws that make it up and how you can use those for humanity's benefit at the end of the day.
Have you ever made a really geeky bake? I see people online that make things like Star Wars cakes in the shape of stormtrooper helmets and stuff. Have you ever done anything like that?
You know what, I did very recently. We were laughing because in our team at work, my colleague, he was one of the roboteers in the recent series of Robot Wars. And I actually made a gingerbread version of his robot, because it aired just after Biscuit Week went out. So I did a gingerbread version of Carbide, which was his robot, with the spinning bar at the front and everything, which seemed to go down pretty well in the office.
Did the cake actually move? Did the bar at the front spin around?
Sadly not. I was thinking initially if I could, put some like chocolate fingers in the middle to make like a bearing, and I thought, Andrew, there's a time and a place. And on a weekday evening, there's only so much gingerbread engineering you can do. So I kind of settled for roughly the right shape, all covered and everything with the bar at the front. But no moving parts. But it looked the part, I think.
So singer, engineer, baker. What next?
Who knows? I mean, I describe myself as a bit of a jack of all trades. I like to give a go to most things. So I don't know what will happen next. Actually, I'd love to do more baking, and if there was more ways to kind of infuse baking with engineering, then that's ideal. But still working out what that's going to look like, I think.
And if people want to follow along with your journey, can they follow you on Twitter?
Yes, I'm on Twitter at CakeSmyth, Smith with a Y, and then I'm also on Instagram as well for if you're hungry and you need to look at some pictures of bake.
Now, Andrew, every guest that we have on the show gets to decide what the song after their interview that we play is going to be. Do you have a song request for us?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to go very cheesy. And this is one that got me through that Bakeoff practice late night, jiving away in the kitchen. Appropriate because it's the end of the month as well. I'm going to go for September by Earth, Wind and Fire.